Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today we're on with Satej. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this recording. And I'm Satej, co founder and CEO of Rocketium. We work with large enterprise and agency marketing and design teams and help with various challenges around getting content, insights around creatives that they make. And I look forward to sharing about customer stories and our journey so far.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the value your company provides to the market.
Yeah, so today, most companies, the way they make creative content for use in paid social, display advertising, or sometimes their own website content, the process for that requires various teams, various tools, a lot of time, money, because the process has more or less not changed from the time when they needed 50 pieces of content a year to now 50,000 pieces of content a year to support more market localization, personalization, testing, various channels, and so on. So the tools that they were using, which is primarily design software by Adobe, maybe sometimes Figma, ticketing software, communication software, all of those are breaking at the seams because you are not able to push that much content through those systems. So even though they are all best in class vertical software, when it comes to pushing this much volume of content, that's really not working. So that's the first problem that we solve, which is how do we bring in all of these teams into a single place? How do we take away the repetitive tasks that are involved in making this content, things around resizing content, making versions, last minute changes, making content for different audiences or different products? That is the first part of Rocketium. The second part is after this content goes live onto all the different platforms, you get performance data of how all of these have worked. But no platform tells you which creative choices that you've made have led to good or bad outcomes. Plus, every channel has its own way of reporting, its own data structures and data formats, and so on. So, we collect data from all the different platforms. We add to it very rich information about what is inside your creative. And then, through both reporting and visualization dashboards, as well as a very powerful co pilot, we allow our customers to get insights about what sort of creative decisions are working, what should they avoid, how should they optimize their campaigns.
Interesting. So are you creating content through Rocketium, or are you more analyzing and recommending what content to create?
Yeah, so those are the two parts of our product. So Rocketium Creative is focused on making all of this content, and Rocketium Performance is focusing on analyzing it. So we see those as two sides of the same coin, one focused on creative teams, one focusing on performance teams. Those two try to do the same thing, but sometimes speak a very different language, and we are trying to help both of them through one software.
Interesting. So I've heard about like different LLMs or different AI tools, possibly imagery or things that the output that are trademarked or copyrighted. I'm not sure the term, but basically owned by other people. Can you speak to that in the industry and how you're addressing that or what your perspective is?
Yeah, so because Rocketium was built when other types of AI was there before generative AI, we have used various kinds of AI to solve this problem. Now that generative AI has come, we have integrated that into our product for pieces of it. For example, you want to generate copy, you want to generate some, let's say, backgrounds for your products, or let's say a pedestal where you want to put it, or repackaging the product in some ways. But Rocketium is not using generative AI to make the whole piece of design. We have built design software similar to Photoshop or Figma or After Effects, where you are making the whole design on Rocketium, or you are starting with an existing Photoshop or Figma file, and then Rocketium is helping you make all the different versions of it. So we are not using LLMs to generate all of those because A, some of these issues around copyrights and trademarks, all of those things. And B, today LLMs are not at a stage where one shot you would get a great answer. You would get text that is garbled. You might lose some information about your branding, logo, products, those kinds of things, because it's a more probabilistic, approximate kind of a system. It's not a very exact thing. And for such kind of content, marketers, designers expect pixel level perfection. And that's what we've really built. We are not using LLMs to generate it. We have built our own design software from scratch.
Gotcha. So How long did this tool take to build? What was that building process
Oh my
like?
God. Yeah. We've been building Rocketium now for 5 years. And even though there is AI now, which can make it feel like you can build software very quickly, you would hit on different kinds of corner cases in order to solve this kind of problem. Even such a simple thing like fonts. It's not a universal thing. Fonts don't work the same way in Windows versus Mac. So even though we are on a browser, so most of our customers are using Chrome, even though they are on the same Chrome browser, a person who's sitting on Mac would see it a certain way, somebody on Windows sees another way. Our servers are hosted on Linux, so it's a third operating system which is actually rendering this piece of content. So just getting every piece of the kerning ligature, every bit of the fonts rendered correctly, that itself has taken us some time. We have built our own Photoshop integration. Very complex or very simple Photoshop files, whatever you have, you're able to bring it in, and Rocketium automatically figures out all the different layers in it, how they're organized. Have you made different artboards of different sizes? All of that we've built over several years. We've had to iterate on that and improve it, right? So that way, it is something that has taken us, I wouldn't say all 5 years has been taken to build this software, but yeah, it has taken several years to get to a level of perfection. But luckily today AI is helping in get to some of these problems, but it cannot all be done in a day.
Yeah. What is the team structure that you started with for this business? Like you mentioned you're a co-founder. So was it just you and your co-founder or co-founders at first, and then you hired out a bunch of developers? How did you approach the hiring strategy for the business?
Yes, I'll tell you in general how somebody like us would do it, and then specifically for us what happened. In general, before you can start going to market and selling something, you want to build the product. So you typically start with somebody who has those skills. So in our case, when we started back in 2015, we started with that sort of a team. It was my co-founder and I, a few developers, designers, and we just spent the first few years building software. And then we started bringing on board a marketing team, a sales team, and then customer success to start supporting our customers, figuring out how they work, what else we could do for them, and so on. But this product itself we built in 2020. So we completely transitioned away from the more consumer focused product that we were building. Our Rocket Team, in fact, started off as a game development company. And from there, we went into this piece of work that we do. But when we started, that was our journey. But when this product was begun, we already had most of the team. So it was about taking the guts of some of that previous product that we had, building new stuff, and then taking it to market. But typically you would start with people who are able to take what customers need or what we think customers need, build that out, and only then you're adding more go to market people.
It must have been a challenge and probably a somewhat painful decision to decide to reorient the company to this new vision. What was that decision like for you? What was that moment where you were like, we have to shift the purpose of this team to something new?
Yeah, so because Rocketium was started initially as something that was just an idea in our heads and not something that we knew somebody wanted, we got that itch out of our system saying that we want to build something that we think should exist. We tried it, nobody wants it. And then everything we did after that was in response to something that somebody said they wanted. So as long as somebody wants something, we are happy to work on that, because as a builder you are really excited by solving real customer problems and making somebody's day to day better. And so when 2020, when we actually decided to build this, it was a very easy decision, because before that what we were doing, it had hundreds of thousands of people who had used our product, thousands of people who had paid for it, but the level of engagement, the level of impact we knew we were creating for them was very low. Because that time what we were building was a Canva for video, is how we used to describe it. There was no easy way on the internet to go online and quickly make a video. That is something that we were doing back in 2016 onwards. We were doing that. But most of the people who were doing that were end users, customers. They were not part of a business in that sense. They were doing it for personal reasons, birthday wishes, recount of some trip that they were doing, any of those kinds of things. And they would use our product maybe once in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. So even if you want to make the product better, you reach out to them and say, hey, what more can we do? There wasn't really a lot of engagement. But then this product, when we started building, one of the top three e-commerce companies in the world reached out to us saying that we read about your funding and we think we can use some of your product to build our own product. And as we spoke with them, we realized that, hey, if they build, it will take them some amount of time, some amount of money. We can do it way better, way faster, we thought. And so we quickly put together a prototype. And when we met their senior leaders and business owners and so on, they were really excited. And we knew we had something on our hands that we needed to invest in. So the decision was actually very easy. On the one hand, were thousands of people who used to say, hey, everything good with your software. We don't really need your help. We are good, whatever you have, right? Versus another set of people saying, we are in so much pain, your software can actually help us. Why don't you go build it? And it wasn't just them, we also validated it with a few other large businesses, and they all had the same problem. So we knew that we would have far more engaged customers, we would solve a much larger problem.
Oh, that's really cool. Wow. What were some of the things that, what were some of the business lessons you learned along the way throughout the last 10 years?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one for us was that because we were not experts in the field, we were not marketers, we were not designers, we had not experienced in retail or e-commerce or agency business what it takes to really run campaigns, improve them, optimize them. What does it take to really build any of those things? We really lacked the innate knowledge of what problem we want to solve. And we were very clear that we don't want to sit and predict something and just build for the heck of it. We wanted to build it with customers. So the number one lesson is you need to be very clear who your buyer is, who your user is, what problem you're solving for them. Because even though the product was built 5 years ago, only over the last couple of years we are starting to see a very clear focus on certain kinds of people we are sure are successful with our product. There were many people we worked with in the early days, we thought they were the right customers for us, and we built a lot of our product by working closely with them. But because they are no longer, they are proven that they are no longer the right fit for us and we for them, we could have saved maybe a couple of years in building that we spent in building the wrong thing. So the number one thing would be have clarity about who the customer is, who the buyer, the user of the product is, and build for them. The ideal case is you are a proxy of them in some way. Let's say you're building a software for setting up calendar meetings, or let's say if you had to build software for recording or content creation or any of those things, right? You already feel a lot of that pain, you already know some of it, and you can get to an 80% just with your knowledge, right? So that would be the first one. The second one would be focus, because when you are early and you talk to a lot of people, you get a lot of ideas and everything seems interesting. And because you are very small, you feel like, how can I say no to so many things? I have to say yes to everything that comes my way. And so as a small team, when you don't have a lot of time and resources and people or any of those things, spending time on many things is actually what will kill you, instead of picking one thing and that being the wrong thing. Because you could pick something that even 1,000 people in this world care about and you could build a business out of it, right? But instead of saying that, oh, this one thing I'm doing is a $5 billion industry, this is a $10 billion industry, this is a $20 billion industry, let me add that up and now I have a $35 billion industry. That's the wrong way to think about it. A $500 million industry is very large for you. So pick a path, start working towards it. Don't divert the limited time and money and people that you have on many different things. And yeah, then there would be many other business lessons that we've learned along the way, but these would be the primary ones.
That is a really great lesson. And yeah, that, do you have any more? I'm just curious, do you have any more insight into what was the user that you thought you were building for and then who ended up being the ideal user?
Yeah, so in the early days, because this was the post COVID, when there was a lot of funding boom that happened, a lot of businesses really raised a lot of funding. They had grow at all costs instruction given to them by their boards, and they were spending a lot on paid marketing. And that's why they used to come to us to say that, hey, we spend so much on paid marketing, we need more content, we need more analytics about the content that we are making. So we thought that the number of unicorns who are our customers, that's a great signal that we are onto something. But then many of them, most of them went out of business when funding dried up, or their business models were invalidated, or they were beaten by competition, acquired, and so on. So what we thought was our ideal customer profile, which is high funding, high growth, these crazy fast growing companies, startups, that we thought were perfect customers for us, now it's almost the exact opposite. We do not want high growth, high risk kind of companies as customers, because they have still not figured out their go to market, their product market fit, and so on. We work with more established companies, not to say that they are not growing fast, but they are not unproven businesses. They are established, proven businesses that are almost like an investor. Would you invest in the every IPO versus would you invest in more established companies? It's more, we are no longer going after IPOs.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And I could see how you would reach the initial conclusion and how you would then change that customer fit. I'm curious how you're marketing it. You have a marketing product, or at least an advertising creative product. Are you using it for your ads? And how else are you approaching marketing in the space?
Yeah, so because we started as a more consumer org, we knew the B2C type of marketing, which is at a mass scale, produce content at a large scale, run ads at a large scale, have self-serve sign up. So a lot of that is what we used to do. So we had to completely reroute our mind and completely rethink how we do marketing. So we have gone from that sort of product-led growth, self-serve signups, and hundreds of signups a day to now having tens of thousands of visitors on our website. And now we have learned to live with that, going from hundreds of thousands to now maybe a fraction of that. But these are large established companies that we go through. So today, a lot of our business comes through RFPs, requests for proposals, that come from large companies who are looking for somebody in this space, and they would invite us as one of the leaders in this space along with a few other companies, and then you have to go through that process. So that is one type of business that we do, the marketing that we do. The other is being present at industry events. That's something that we did not do when we were a more B2C company. Now that we are more B2B, we are going to the relevant events where our buyers are, create awareness through that. Of course, we do the usual stuff of writing content, putting stuff on LinkedIn, running LinkedIn ads, Google ads, and so on. But another big part of it is meeting customers and prospects in person. We do city-wide roundtables, dinners. We have a sales team that is doing outreach to relevant companies saying, hey, we already work with some teams in your company, would you like to know more about what we do, and so on. So there's a few things that we do in demand generation. And to answer your question, Rocketium is not an ideal customer profile of itself, so we don't use the product for ourselves. We are pretty focused that way. Ideally we would have been our own products customers, but then you're building a product for a B2B company, and that to a startup, whereas today we sell to B2C companies and enterprises.
Ah, okay. That's interesting. And it does make sense. I appreciate how focused you are on the end customer and just being honest. If, you're not exactly what your end customer is, which is natural. It would be, you'd need a very wide customer base or potential customer base in order to fit in your own customer base.
The For example, the payroll company that we use, they are only focused, it's called Gusto. They are focused on small businesses, anybody who's below 500 people. Now they would be great customers of themselves, but they are a 2 3,000 member team, and they say that we don't use it for ourselves. It would be great if we could, because every day we would discover something that we had to add there. But then you are doing the product for a company of a very different size. Our customers are a lot smaller, so they are at the other end of the spectrum where they are too big for their own product. In our case, we are too small for our own product.
It makes sense. Yeah, I like that example. So, how, just going back to the very beginning, how did you decide you wanted to start a company?
Yeah, so the previous company where I used to work, it was in the same space as Uber. It was competing with them in several markets. It was ahead of Uber. But then various things happened. That company got acquired by a competitor. I made some money from that. And over the couple of years that I was at that company was my life. I was not thinking about any other company. But this idea for Rocketium, the one that I mentioned, which started with games, that was in my head for the 10 years before that. So when the acquisition happened, I was already in a sort of vacuum, going from this extreme high velocity to almost hitting a wall where there was nothing, to having some money on my hands, plus having this idea in my head for a while, plus not having thought about any other company for the last several years. It felt like Rocketium, this company that we have now, that would fill the vacuum in a nice way. It was an itch. I wanted to scratch that. I wanted this product to exist, so I started it. But very quickly, I realized that that's the worst way to build a company, because you have an idea, You want to do it because somebody else has an idea. They know the need of something that you need to build, and that's the only reason to build a business. If you want to make money, if you want to continue running that business, if you want to do it as a laboratory where you are coming up with new ideas and constructing, that's absolutely fine. The research lab is a great thing to do, but it is not a business.
Yeah. How do you collect feedback from customers? Is it just built into the product, like a little window where people write? Do you have roundtables with customers or panels with prospects or customer? Like, how do you get that feedback loop? How do you listen to the market?
Yeah, so we do this in a few ways. Many of those you've already listed. So in our product, every few months we have a survey that we do so that we can at least quantify and know what our net promoter score is, NPS. So that allows us to say who are our promoters, people who would rate us on a scale of 1 to 10, they would give us a 9 or a 10. Who are our detractors, which is 0 to 6, and then who are neutral, which is 7 or 8. So now that gives you a good sense of, without giving them any more information, they are giving you a 9 or 10 or 0 to 6, 7 or 8, whichever it is. You get a good sense of how people feel about it. Separately, we have a customer success team that is sometimes daily, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month, speaking with customers. So they are continuously talking to them, they are always asking for feedback, they are going to them with new product launches that we have, or ideas about what are industry best practices, what are some things they should be doing. So that becomes a great channel for us. We also do some of what you are saying around roundtables and advisory boards. We do these fun things once in a while. We call them product Oscars, where when every we call our sprints launch events, at the end of a launch event of 6 weeks, we would call some of our customers and we would say that, hey, this launch event has ended, these are all the things that we've launched. And earlier we used to do voting and give prizes and stuff, but now it's more a showcase, and then just give us feedback, tell us what you think, because people who are building, even now, they are hearing directly from customers. And then product managers are joining both sales calls as well as customer calls, so both prospects as well as customers, so that even before selling something, you are getting to hear from people saying these are some common challenges that we have, we will do it, we will not do it, we already do it. Those are some things that they would talk about.
It sounds like the business has a lot of really well or best practices built into it. What's your educational background like? How did you learn all of this stuff? Did you learn along the way? Where did you learn this?
Yes, I've done two masters, one technical masters in computer science, one MBA, but I can safely say without disrespecting those organizations that I learned nothing in those places, because I don't think what you should be doing at a job should be learned in an educational institution. Those are things that you would learn at the job, not only because things are moving so fast, almost like regulation cannot keep up with innovation. Same way, I do not think education can keep up with innovation. Capitalism has given us a great way to innovate really fast. When there is competition, when there are big outcomes or total failure on the line, people are doing their best work, and there's no time to go to an educational institution and say that, hey, what should we do in this case? You would try something, see if it works or no. A few years after that, then MBA professors can come back and say, oh, here is a great pattern among all of these companies, maybe there is something to it, and they would come up with a theory, right? Really, all of it was trying to solve our own problems. One good thing is that running a SaaS business, there isn't a lot of innovation that is required in the day to day operations. There are known metrics, there are known ways of running your business, there are very standard set of practices of how you should do your reviews and so on. I did not know that for the longest time. I had to discover them along the way. I had to come up with some things on my own, only for somebody to tell me later that, oh, this is standard, everybody does this. So for me to say that, hey, I should have just spoken with a few people. Yes, a combination of some things that are known in the industry, some things that we realized we had to do. But the most important thing is, for us, improving something on a daily basis, that's one of our prime directives, which are our company's principles. So we are always looking for things to ways to make things better. Every month we have catch ups informally, also after some of the meetings we say how could this meeting have been better. So we are constantly trying to improve ourselves, and that's really how over the last so many years our products have gotten to a certain stage. There are still many challenges that we have, there are still some things that I can't believe are so unbelievably broken, but it's okay. We'll keep improving and we'll find more things and make those better.
Yeah. What was the funding situation, what's the funding story like for your business? Did you initially think that you would be going for funding? And how did those meetings start? And what was that story?
Yeah, so the previous company where I was working, the startup, that was a hyper funded, hyper growth company. So it was always an assumption that yeah, you start a company, you will get funding and you'll keep growing your business a certain way. But as soon as I started, when I saw that the gaming idea that I was working on, nobody really understood why they would go and make their own games and share with others and so on. I realized that it won't be right for me. I don't want to use words like ethical or whatever, but I just didn't feel right that I would go and ask somebody for money and say that, hey, look at my pedigree, look at my team, look at all the ideas that we have, give us money and we'll figure something out. So for the first 2 years I funded it myself from the money I made from the previous company sale, my savings and so on. Of course, all the stories of maxing out your cards, borrowing from parents, all of those things. For the first 2 years I did that. But when I knew that people would pay for the product, even if it was a B2C company, we went out and raised funding. The first investor was somebody who had invested in the startup where I'd worked before. They were the lead investors in that, and people I had worked and studied with. And after that, we raised a little bit of money from another investor as well. But after 5 years, when we started working on this product, that's when we realized we have a real business on our hands, a real B2B SaaS company, enterprise focused business we could be building. And in the last 5 years, we have now raised 11 million more from marquee investors across the world.
Wow. Wow. How did the investors react when you decided to shift the focus of the company? Were they upset? Were they happy that maybe there's a even greater possibility of return? How what was that reaction like?
Yeah, so we've been lucky to have investors who have been patient. They've been listening to reason and listening to the logic that we are giving. Sometimes, if our logic does not make sense, we work with them and refine our own thinking. But when they also saw that we were first working in a B2C market, and from there we saw a B2B opportunity, especially like I said, the top three e-commerce marketplace in the world was the starting customer with us. How much more they were paying than everything else that we had done before. They saw the possibility of where this could go. And at the same time, we didn't completely stop what we were doing before. In fact, that product was active until August of last year. So whoever was a customer of that was still able to use it. We were still able to support them. That revenue anyway continued. And then we went into this direction. And as they saw progress in that, more customers, more revenue that we were generating from there, they were able to support us in that direction.
What kind of analytics or metrics do you look at to assess the success of either your marketing or more broadly just the health metrics of your business?
Yeah, so even here we are lucky that SaaS is a very plug and play kind of a business model. There are very standard metrics that you would look at in order to see any business how well it is doing. The metrics that we typically look at, obviously, the headline metric is going to be your ARR, the annual recurring revenue. So, how much people pay on a monthly basis multiplied by 10. You would also look at what's the ACV, which is the annual contract value, how much somebody pays you over a year. That gives you obviously the number of customers that you have. The ACV is one of the most important metrics because if your ACV is high, the kind of sales cycle that you would have, how you would market to that customer, all of those things come from that. So over the years, we have seen our ACV climb steadily, and you can also directly correlate that to how our marketing is changing. So that's another metric we report. Churn is a big one. So the way we would report churn is with two retention metrics. One is a gross revenue retention, which is out of the revenue that was there 12 months ago, how much of that have we retained? And then there is a net revenue retention, which is how much have we retained? Adding to that, how much we've expanded our customers. So that shows the potential of expansion. So we report both of those. There is also a metric around CAC. So the cost of acquiring a customer, we also look at. So this is a combination of, and sometimes people call that sales efficiency as well. There are two ways of measuring it. Sales efficiency just says that how much did you spend on sales and marketing last quarter, and how much new revenue have you added this quarter. So you divide the new revenue by the investment that you made last quarter. If that is over one, then every dollar that you're putting in generates more than $1, which is a good thing. So those are some of the metrics that we measure. Now each team has its own set of metrics. So if it's a sales team, they would look at the win rate. So out of the conversations that are going on, how many do you actually win? the average sales cycle they would look at. So every team has their own metrics, but the top level metrics that we look at are the ones that I mentioned.
And do you look at marketing metrics at all?
Yeah, so in the marketing team, the things that they would measure would be the number of introductory calls that were set up, obviously broken down by the different channels, so that they know that, okay, events are contributing this much, outbound calling this much, ads, content, so on, or inbound is so much. After that, we would look at the number of MQLs that would happen. So marketing would say that yes, so many people did come to us, but how many of those were actually valid according to our definition of ideal customer profile? And then there would be an SAL, which is a sales accepted lead, which is where marketing says, great, not only did I say it was good, the sales team also accepted it. And then it transitions over to the sales team, where it's called an SQL, which is a sales qualified lead. So somebody would speak with them and say, hey, the company sounded great, the person sounded exactly the ones that we want, but they only want to do it in 2035. So it's not something that can go into a pipeline. So this is not qualified. So those are the metrics that we would use in marketing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Pretty standard. It's funny how businesses really speak such a similar language. You almost wonder. Actually, I'm curious your perspective. Can Do you think, like, how soon or if ever will an AI be able to create and run a company?
Yeah, in some ways, that is what I'm trying to do, not to replace any of us with AI, but to say that how can our business become predictable, very standardized, and running like clockwork and almost boring? Because today, at an earlier stage company, there's always an excess of adrenaline because something is happening all the time and you have to react to it and you have to change something. Oh, this sort of marketing plan is not working. Should we change something? So, in a way, as you get more mature, your adrenaline goes down in your system. You aren't making so many changes. Things are more or less running in a similar sort of a way, right? So instead of chaotic traffic, you are moving towards maybe a subway station or a metro system and so on, right? So that's really where you're trying to go. And the more systematic and rigorous you make your process, the easier it is for AI to do that. So now I wouldn't say that AI can and should come up with an idea for a business, take it to market for the first time and so on, but when you've reached a certain level of maturity, I don't think every morning I should go to my sales dashboard and marketing dashboard and product dashboard, look at all the metrics, try to make sense of it. I should have agents which are doing it, looking at all of these things, and almost like an executive assistant or a chief of staff tell me all of this. The very next thing is going to be, hey, after you tell me this, I do this. After you tell me this, I do this. It's so standard, the things that we're doing, because our business has reached a certain level of maturity. Why don't you do it? So then it might just do. So I can really see us getting to that stage where AI is getting more and more data from different sources. It's getting better at taking that and applying your way of thinking. I've heard some funny stories of this where companies, what they've done is, because their founders are, they have such a strong voice and they keep vetoing decisions, what they've done is all the past things that they have written, said, the decisions they have made, they've fed it into an agent. And before coming up with an idea or before a review meeting, they just throw it into this agent and say, okay, what is this X person going to do? Just tell me all of that. And they already get like a pre-review done by them. So as long as the boss is not a completely chaotic, unpredictable person, you can pass through all of your reviews with ease because you go through this before. So I can see this happening to a large degree. 60-80% would happen, but still a large chaotic unpredictable part of it will exist, which I would say humans would still do.
Yeah. I love that. And I really like the example you gave that you're looking at all these different dashboards, you're digesting it, and then you're coming up with the next action. And just last week, I took one of my dashboards and I exported it as a PDF. And then I fed it into Claude, and it, to my surprise, was able to read everything and it didn't hallucinate at all. And it even so it gave a digest of what happened recently. It even gave recommendations on changes to make given that data. And I was like, it gave me like a little existential crisis moment, because that's like what analysts always do,
Yeah.
and executives. The analysts specifically are surfacing a lot of these insights and trends. And I think that we're just like a moment away from automating that as an email delivery or a Slack message. Hey, you should check this out. This changed or whatever. And then we're maybe a couple moments away from
Yeah.
actually taking the next step and maybe setting up a meeting to review something or change something or recommendations on what to change that are that maybe come with actual action rather than
Yeah.
just making recommendations.
I would compare it to having a very smart, competent, hardworking team member of yours. If you have such people around you, of course you should have that stress to go into a meeting and say that I want to make a good point. I don't want to sound dumb in front of these people, or these extremely high quality people. I don't want to lead them astray with random things. I want to go in prepared. So the better your team is, you want to be better because they are doing so many things, they are coming up with ideas. The answer is not to say that I'm afraid that they'll come for my job, or to wish that they were dumb and incompetent and lazy. Right? You want people who are good because that's how you make progress. And now you have potentially infinite, really smart, hardworking, and competent people.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very hopeful and optimistic about AI in the short term, like in the next decade. I think it's going to be amazing. I think once AI starts to really progress and gets past that singularity moment, I have my doubts. I think it's just a lot. I don't know what will come of it, but it's very powerful.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what's
And
your long-term perspective on AI?
I would say the worst case is not going to be civilizational collapse and robots taking over like Terminator. I think the worst case is going to be something like Wall-E, where robots are so good at everything that people will wonder why should they do anything. And if we figure out a way to feed people, give them entertainment, and just create human connection, whatever, maybe it'll be like Atlantis, where we don't have to do something because we have to, but because we want to. So the real challenge will be, how do we keep ourselves occupied? What do we spend time on? Because along with this, there are also research is happening in parallel on life extension, increasing human longevity. So if people live to be 150, where the health that you have at 50, you could have that till 120, and you have nothing to do, that's the worst case, right? You're going to be busy doing nothing, and the mind will take you to dark places then. So I would say that is the worst case, but hopefully we don't get to either Wally or Terminator, but something a lot more positive.
Yeah, I think so. Between the 1980s and 2010, being like really technical was a massive advantage. And I think that being really business minded and creative is going to be like that for the next 40-year span because we are now building the tools that will assist with a lot of that and bring down the cost of building a really technical product. But then I think the very last thing that AI will be able to master is that business intuition and creativity, the sort of like the things that make us human that are quite intangible. I think eventually it will be able to simulate it pretty well, but not until it handles all of the easier stuff.
And then there
Then
is a part
who
that,
knows what's next?
yeah, and then there's the part of real being human, the human connection of it. That until you have humanoid robots, which many companies are trying to do, that part of giving somebody company, giving somebody physical assistance, a back rub, a hug, like you need people to do that as well, right? So maybe the end goal is for all of us just to do more physical stuff with our hands and help out the elderly or help out kids, or just spend more time being communal with each other. Who knows where it will go? But yeah, if 40 years after what you described, when AI is good at business and creativity, then maybe the only thing remaining is for humans to just be human and spend time with each other and not look at phones or virtual reality devices or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll certainly see. And I'll keep doing the podcast even then. We'll talk about the fully
Yeah, we,
automated
we need
AI at that point.
storytelling. We need people to share their lived experiences. So we need things like this always.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Satej. It was just a great conversation. I love like looking into the future and you have such a great perspective on business. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Alexander. It was a pleasure being here.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you soon.